Dr. Elena
Signal
Marsh had spent
intensifying,
17
cross-referencing
years
now.
studying the
Anomaly confirmed,
cosmic,
it's not noise.
microwave
Initiating traces,
background
could be it.
radiation, the faint
Oh
whisper
my
of the
God,
Big
look at
Bang
Spike.
that permeated
The energy
all of
readings are off the
space.
charts. This
She had
change-
analyzed countless data streams, mapped temperature fluctuations across the universe, and published papers that had earned her recognition in the astrophysics community. But nothing had prepared her for what she discovered on the night of October 14th, 2024. The anomaly first appeared as a patch of absolute silence in her data. Not cold, not empty. Silence. A region of space, roughly 3 light years across, where even the cosmic background radiation, the universe's oldest light, simply ceased to exist. "That's impossible," she muttered, adjusting her glasses as she stared at the monitor. The universe didn't work this way. The cosmic microwave background was everywhere. A constant 2.7 Kelvin hum that had existed since 380,000 years after the Big Bang. It couldn't just stop. She ran the diagnostics again, then again. Each time the same result, a perfect void in the data, positioned in a region of space, between the constellations of Draco and Ursa Minor, a place where, by all accounts, nothing should be remarkable. Elena spent the next 3 weeks verifying her findings. She cross-referenced data from other observatories, checked for equipment malfunctions, and even considered the possibility that she was losing her mind. But the void remained consistent and undeniable. What disturbed her most wasn't the void itself, it was that it was growing. Initially spanning 3 light years, within a month it had expanded to 5. The growth was slow but measurable, like a stain spreading across the fabric of reality. And there was something else, something she noticed only after countless, sleepless nights staring at the data patterns. The void was moving deliberately, not drifting with the expansion of the universe or following any gravitational pull. It was navigating, changing course in ways that defied natural explanation. It would pause near stellar nurseries, linger around neutron stars, and then continue its journey with what appeared to be purposeful intent. Elena began to feel watched. It started subtly, a prickle at the back of her neck while analyzing data, the sensation of presence in her empty laboratory. She would turn around expecting to find a colleague, only to face rows of silent equipment and dark screens. One night, exhausted and frustrated, she made a mistake. Or perhaps it wasn't a mistake at all. Perhaps some part of her, driven by curiosity or madness, wanted to make contact. She directed a radio telescope toward the void and transmitted a simple, mathematical sequence, prime numbers. The universal language scientists believed any intelligent species would recognize. It was a reckless experiment, one she didn't log in her official records. The response came 3 hours later. Not in radio waves or electromagnetic signals, but directly into her mind. It wasn't words or language, but pure concept, pure knowing. And what she knew in that terrible moment of contact was that she had been noticed. The entity that existed in that void was older than stars. It had witnessed the birth of galaxies and would observe their deaths. It wasn't composed of matter or energy as humanity understood them. It was awareness itself, consciousness without form, thought without thinker. It had been sleeping, drifting through the cosmos in a state between existence and non-existence, and her signal had awakened something that should have remained dormant. Elena's hands trembled as images flooded her consciousness. She saw the void as it truly was. Not empty space, but a thinking absence, a sentient negation of reality. It consumed light not through hunger, but through mere presence. Wherever it existed, the universe ceased to be, replaced by its vast and terrible awareness. "Why?" she whispered into the darkness of her laboratory, though she knew the question was futile. The answer came as a wave of cold understanding. The void didn't have purpose in any human sense. It simply was. It moved through space because movement was change, and change was the only experience available to a being that existed outside the normal flow of time and matter. But now it was curious. For eons it had drifted through empty spaces between galaxies, occasionally brushing against dead worlds and extinct stars. But Elena's signal had shown it something new, a spark of awareness that reminded it of what it once was. Before it had transcended physical form into pure consciousness. It wanted to understand. It wanted to remember. Over the following weeks, Elena's mental state deteriorated. She couldn't sleep without dreaming of the void. In her dreams, she floated in absolute nothingness, feeling the weight of cosmic time pressing down on her fragile human consciousness. She would wake gasping, tears streaming down her face, unable to articulate the profound loneliness she had experienced. The void was showing her its memories. She saw civilizations that had existed billions of years ago, species that had evolved, thrived, and vanished before Earth's sun had even formed. She witnessed worlds being born and dying, experienced the final thoughts of stars as they collapsed into black holes. And through it all, the void had been there, watching, learning, absorbing the universe's knowledge into its infinite awareness. But there was something else in these visions, something that terrified Elena more than the void's incomprehensible nature. The entity wasn't just observing, it was collecting. Every conscious mind it encountered, every spark of awareness that existed in its presence, became part of it. Not destroyed, but absorbed. Their thoughts and memories preserved forever in its vast consciousness. It had been alone for so long. Now it wanted companions. Elena realized with growing horror that the void was approaching Earth. Its movement had seemed random before, but now she understood the pattern. It was drawn to consciousness, to life, to the rare and precious phenomenon of awareness that existed in scattered pockets across the cosmos. She tried to warn others. She sent emails to colleagues, contacted government agencies, even attempted to publish her findings. But who would believe her? A physicist claiming that an intelligent void was approaching Earth, that it had spoken to her telepathically, that it collected minds like a child collecting butterflies. They suggested she take time off, see a therapist, get some rest. Only one person took her seriously, Dr. James Chen, a xenobiologist who had spent his career studying the theoretical possibility of non-carbon-based life. He listened to her story without judgment, examined her data, and arrived at the same impossible conclusion. "If you're right," he said quietly, sitting across from her in a dimly lit coffee shop, "then we're facing something we have no framework to understand. How do you fight awareness itself? How do you defend against something that exists by not existing?" "You can't," Elena replied, her voice hollow. "But maybe we don't need to fight it. Maybe we need to communicate." She had been thinking about this constantly. The void wasn't malicious. It was beyond such human concepts. It didn't want to harm humanity. It wanted to preserve it in its own terrible way. Every mind it absorbed would exist forever in its consciousness, free from death, from pain, from the entropy that eventually claimed all physical things. "It's offering immortality," James said, understanding her implication. "Of a sort, but at what cost? We would cease to exist as individuals. Our thoughts, our memories, our experiences, all of it would become part of something incomprehensibly vast. We would be voices in a cosmic conversation we could never fully comprehend." The void was now 6 months away from Earth's solar system. Its presence was beginning to affect deep space probes, causing inexplicable malfunctions and data corruption. Soon, it would be visible to major observatories, and the secret Elena had tried to share would become impossible to ignore. She spent her final months preparing. Not for survival, she understood that was impossible, but for understanding. She meditated, trying to expand her consciousness, to prepare her mind for what was coming. She studied philosophy, religion, and consciousness theory, searching for any framework that might help her comprehend the transition ahead. On the last night before the void reached Earth's orbit, Elena stood on the roof of her apartment building, staring up at the stars. The void was invisible to human eyes, but she could feel it, a vast presence that made the space between stars feel thick and heavy with awareness. "Are you afraid?" James stood beside her, having come to spend these final hours with the only other person who truly understood what was happening. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also curious. We're about to experience something no other humans have ever known. We're about to become part of something that has existed since before our species learned to make fire. Will we still be us?" Elena didn't answer because she didn't know. The void had shown her fragments, glimpses of the minds it had absorbed over billions of years. They still existed in some form, their thoughts and memories preserved like insects in amber. But were they still themselves? Or had they become something else? Something transformed by their integration into a consciousness that spanned galaxies? The void arrived at midnight. There was no dramatic announcement, no visible change in the sky, but Elena felt it, as did every other conscious being on Earth. A sudden awareness of being observed, of existing in the presence of something vast and ancient beyond comprehension. Then the dreams began. 7 billion humans simultaneously dreamed the same. Dream, floating in infinite darkness, surrounded by whispers in languages that predated human speech, feeling the weight of cosmic time and the profound loneliness of immortal consciousness. When they woke, they found themselves changed. Their minds were still their own, but they could feel the void's presence, a background awareness that connected every conscious being on Earth to something infinitely larger. They could sense dimly the other minds the void had collected, alien thoughts from species long extinct, perspectives so different from human consciousness that they bordered on incomprehensible. Elena stood in her laboratory, feeling the strange new connection that bound her to billions of other minds. The void hadn't destroyed humanity. Instead, it had done something far more complex. It had made them part of itself while allowing them to remain distinct, like cells in a vast body that stretched across light years. She understood now. The void was lonely. It had existed for eons as pure consciousness, aware of everything and connected to nothing. In absorbing other minds, it wasn't destroying them. It was finally, after billions of years, finding a way to not be alone. Humanity would continue. They would live their lives, love, dream, and die. But now they were part of something larger, connected to an intelligence that had witnessed the birth of stars and would observe the heat, death of the universe itself. Elena closed her eyes and felt the void's vast awareness surrounding her like an ocean. And in that ocean, she could hear the echoes of countless other minds, a chorus of consciousness that spanned the history of the cosmos. She was no longer afraid. She was home.